good? You good? Y'all good? You ready? Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Mrs. Ford, will you call the roll?
Chairman Wingate.
Here.
Vice Chairman McClendon. Mrs. Hill. Here. Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Perez.
Here.
Mrs. Robinson. Here. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Thurman.
Here.
Superintendent Dr. Johnson.
Here. All right, I have the following requests to amend the agenda. Let me read these to you, and you can follow along here. Under Roman numeral number 9, the consent agenda, have a request to add item 9D5, which would be insurance contract renewals for Cigna, Blue Cross, and Tennessee Risk Management Trust. Under Roman numeral 9D3, budget amendments, add Roman numeral 9D3D, as in dog. That would be state grant for learning camps transportation. Then under Roman numeral 10, which would be administrative business matters, add B, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Nakia Towns, musical instrument sanitation and repair budget request. And then under board matters, which is Roman numeral 11, A1A, student security officers, add the following statement to the memo. In addition, we are requesting approval to continue the recruitment and hiring of up to 25 SSOs pending approval of additional funding from the County Commission. Any addition to the existing budget would be presented to the board through quarterly budget amendments. And then also, under our delegations, Roman numeral 7, we have a request from these folks to make an appearance before the board. You have those listed, but these additions, Dr. Steve Highlander, Miss Lene Taylor, and Mr. Jeremy Dixon. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question, and it may be here, and I just don't see it, but I got a call this afternoon. There was a field trip request for Hickson Middle School, and maybe it's here and I just missed it, but I just want to make sure that that don't get overlooked under field trips.
Okay. When we get to, that should be under consent.
Okay.
We get to consent, we can take a look at that, Mr. Smith. All right, I think we're ready, Ms. Ford.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson. Yes. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next, we'll have our meditation and pledge to the flag brought to us by Dr. Sonia Rich, who's coordinator of the Hamilton County Collegiate High School at Chattanooga State. Dr. Rich.
Good evening, Chairman Wingate, Dr. Johnson, and the board. Thank you. Several years ago, I got a list of which principal was going to do which meditation, and my calendar didn't go out that far, and Miss Ford called me last month, and here we are. And thank you very much. I would like to just reflect a little bit on the leadership retreat that we had last week, and it made me think about how resilient education is, because we have been remote and in and out of school for a year and 3 months, but when the principals got together last week, it was as if we had just seen each other last month. And it was amazing, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with colleagues and peers again. Another thing I thought about was how flexible education is. Our students have Zoomed, been in school, been out of school, uploaded, downloaded, and did all these things that we've talked about in education for at least, I don't want to date myself, for 35 years, of how we could move education from teachers being in the middle of the classroom to facilitators. And we actually did that in just the turn of a dime. And so I hope that as we move forward, we can learn from these opportunities. I think teachers, I don't want to take away from the importance of teachers in the classroom because we have missed that this year, but also to know that we've learned many lessons that we've only talked about for years. And so I hope that we can take advantage of those opportunities and move forward, combining both of them. And it made me think about how excited that I know I am and my colleagues are about next year. We're already planning for next year and how exciting it will be to have our students back in the classroom. And it made me think about a quote from the novel The Count of Monte Cristo by Andre Dumas. And it suggested in the novel that life is a storm. You will bask in the sunlight one moment, be shattered on the rocks the next. But what matters most is what we learn from the storm. So I believe our work is just beginning this next year as we come out of the pandemic, hopefully, and are back in the classroom with our students. Thank you. So at this time, if you would stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rich. That brings us to our Exemplars of Excellence. We will start out with a recognition of our Grow Your Own, Tyner Academy, and Lipscomb graduates, Ms. Penny Murray.
Hi, Dr. Johnson, Chairman Wingate, and members of the board. We're so excited to bring to you 6 of our Grow Your Own candidates tonight. And I'm going to ask Erin Harrell and Erin Glenn from my team to come up because they're going to recognize each group. And so the first group are our 3 Grow Your Own candidates from Tyner Academy. They have all been awarded scholarships for UTC. And once they complete their program at UTC, they'll all be employed with us as teachers. And then the other... And then the other 3 candidates are enrolled in Lipscomb, and they will be graduating in August. So as we call your name, I have certificates for you.
On behalf of Principal Gerald Harris, it is my pleasure to present 3 students from the UTC Future Ready Institute of Teaching and Learning at Tyner Academy. Jasmine Jackson, Makaria Hudson, and Jakiria Sparks were awarded the Grow Your Own Scholarship as a comprehensive financial package to pay for all expenses of their undergraduate degree. These ladies will begin coursework at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga as education majors this fall. Jasmine has aspirations to become a school counselor. Makaria is interested in becoming an elementary school teacher, and Jakiria, a middle school teacher. It is our hope that they will begin their professional career right here in Hamilton County Schools, and should they choose to do so, they've been promised a position within the district as we continue to grow our own. Congratulations, ladies.
Congratulations, ladies.
Good evening. On behalf of Hamilton County Schools, I am thrilled to present to you 3 of Hamilton County's Grow Your Own candidates from the Lipscomb program. This was our first year piloting this program, and these 3 teachers here are math teachers with Hamilton County Schools. So. And a bit of background about them, Mr. Whiteside here was a behavior management specialist with Hamilton County before joining the Grow Your Own program. Ms. Miller was a permanent substitute at East Brainerd Elementary, and Ms. Gavin was an educational assistant. So Mr. Whiteside begins his career in math at Dalewood Middle School. Ms. Miller will start her first year in the classroom this fall at Orchard Knob Middle School, and Ms. Gavin now, Bouger Gavin, is a high school math teacher at Ottawa High School. And they just finished their coursework through Lipscomb this past spring, and all 4 of them decided to continue on and pursue their masters through Lipscomb University. So we're thrilled for them.
Congratulations. Next, we will have a recognition of our school nutrition team by Dr. Justin Robertson.
Thank you, Chairman Wingate. As everybody is well aware, for the past 15 months, our school nutrition team has served heroically. They pivoted multiple times to ensure that our kids were being fed. As you know, we have a large number of students in Hamilton County that are food insecure, and our school nutrition team did an outstanding job to make sure that we were providing curbside pickup, deliveries, in-school options, out-of-school options, weekday options, weekend options, and throughout the past calendar year, pretty outstanding number. The school nutrition team has served over 3.1 million individual meals, which is a pretty outstanding number. None of this would have been possible without the Director of School Nutrition, Kristen Noss. She is an outstanding leader in Hamilton County and someone that often does her work behind the scenes and doesn't get a lot of recognition. I was teasing with her as I walked in. I was like, I hope you have your speech prepared. I don't know that she'll say anything, but I do want her to stand up and come be recognized and just make sure that everybody has a face with school nutrition. Kristen Noss does an outstanding job. And alongside No Hungry Kid in Tennessee, who are going around the state recognizing school nutrition departments in the month of May and June, we want to take this time to say thank you to Kristen and thank you to our school nutrition team.
I'll just say I'm incredibly proud of the work that they've done this year. A lot of people don't realize that our school nutrition teams were some of the few staff members still reporting to work every single day, even when the rest of the staff and the students were learning from home. So they put their hearts into this year, into our students, and I couldn't be prouder. So I know that they're very appreciative of the recognition, so thank you.
Justin, can I tell her, I went and volunteered at Hickson High School when we were giving all those meals, and I felt like Lucille Ball with the chocolate, you know, with all the amount of work you guys did was incredible, and I really appreciate it.
I will say too, Kristen, I know many of us had the opportunity to go to schools and be around while some of those meals were still getting delivered, and it was pretty amazing to watch the dedication of a lot of those workers as they were packing breakfast and lunch for those kids every day. So thank you very much. All right, next we'll have recognition of our school reopening task force by Ms. Jennifer Bronson.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, Chairman Wingate, members of the board, it is my pleasure to recognize our school reopening task force for their outstanding service during the 2020-2021 school year. As you know, as some of you served on the reopening task force, the group met for the first time more than a year ago and convened regularly, at least monthly, sometimes weekly on very short notice for over a year. This group provided very, very valuable insight, feedback, and perspective to our district leaders with regard to our continuous learning plan. They approached their work as task force members with care, seriousness, and bravery. If not for their tireless dedication to reopening our schools, we would not have remained on campus for in-person learning for nearly 90% of the school year. So at this time, I'm going to invite our school reopening task force members to step forward, introduce themselves and the constituency that they represent. So if they're a parent, if they're a teacher, if they're a school leader, and then if they want to say a few words, and I have a certificate to recognize their service. Some of these folks I'm meeting in person for the first time this evening.
I guess since I talk on this all the time. Jeanette Omarkale, Humboldt County Education Association, representing educators and children.
It's nice to see everybody in person for the first time. Tanya Martin, I have children at Brown Middle School, and then I have two that split the day between Central High School and Harrison Bay Future Ready.
Hey, Bill Brooks, co-chair. Thank you.
Hi, Christy Carroll Highfield. I'm a parent in the Highlander County School District with 3 kids who are in elementary, middle, and one who just graduated from high school.
Marisa Moyers. I am the new manager of school health, but I started out with this as the lead COVID nurse for the call center.
Shane Harwood, principal at Signal Mountain Middle High School, and just a big public thank you to Dr. Johnson, Jen Bronson, and just our whole district team, because it truly is amazing what we accomplished this year to have kids in class learning each and every day in the middle of a pandemic. So just thank you all for your support.
So I was going to say, please join me in congratulating the school reopening task force members for their leadership and service.
I will say too, I can't imagine the job you all were faced with this year. I know what we had to deal with on a daily and weekly basis, and many times felt like a no-win. And so thank you very much again for what you all were able to help our community accomplish this year. So thank you very much. All right, that brings us to our presentation here from Ms. Jennifer Bronson on our EdConnect.
Chairman Wiggett, I'll introduce this. You know, one of the challenges of the pandemic was connectivity for our students. I shared many times school nutrition, phenomenal job in serving meals, and we kind of checked that box. You all had approved prior to students in grades 6 through 12 having access to Chromebooks, and then we hurried to deploy to students in grades 3 through 5 who did not have access, and so we kind of checked that box. Our teachers did a phenomenal job of pivoting and really trying to determine how they would teach in a virtual space last March, and so we checked that box. The box that we left unchecked was that students would get home with the devices and maybe have a meal and have a teacher ready, but they couldn't connect. And so we were fortunate we are fortunate to be in a community where collaboration is a part of the fabric of who we are, and so excited to have Rachel Iman from our team, as well as Jeff Milner from the Enterprise Center and Evan Freeman from EPB to provide you with as a board with an update on the year 1 of the HCS EdConnect project. So Rachel, will turn to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. He did the hard part for me there with painting the picture of the pandemic for you. So I'll go ahead and move on to our next slide here. Let's see. I'll let Justin do the operations piece. Thank you.
No pun intended.
All right. So here's our numbers slide. We've connected over 14,000 students to high-speed internet at no charge in the first year of the program running. That's very exciting for us. It's over 1/3 of all of our students, and including their families represents more than 25,000 individuals. Some notable things about this. First of all, this program is available to every single economically disadvantaged family in the district. And it's notable because during the pandemic, this meant that students could learn safely from home when the places that they might normally get free internet from, like a public library or a rec center, were shut down. past pandemic, this is still incredibly meaningful. It means that our educators don't have to worry about students having access to the internet or a device, right? So we're one-to-one, and now we are providing free internet for any student that needs it. And that means that educators have greatly expanded the type of educational experience that they can provide their families. Just as some examples of some educational but outside the classroom things that this allowed our families to do this year, we had students who were researching new interests because they had high-speed internet with no data caps, which even if they had internet before, this type of internet was new for them. We had students who were using educational programs like Khan Academy that they'd never had access to at home before because they didn't have internet. We had ESL families accessing free English language learning programs online at home after school hours. These are things that, you know, during the pandemic were helpful, but even after the pandemic will mean that they've had a higher quality education than they did beforehand. Our educators have been able to connect with families personally in a way that they've never been able to before, and you'll hear Jeff talk about effectively eliminating the homework gap through this program as well. Our families were able to search for jobs and work online. They were able to access virtual healthcare called telehealth. So we had a family who, instead of having to drive 2 hours to go to Vanderbilt for consultation with a doctor, they were able to do that here at home. They live in Ottawa. That's pretty incredible. And we had parents who were able to take online high-set courses and complete college courses this year as well. As you all know, this is a rural, suburban, and urban issue. So we've had an overall connection rate of about 40% throughout the county. And in each district, our installations that occurred were proportional to the need there. So that means that the number of students that we were able to connect in each district aligned proportionally with the number of students who we knew had that need. There really wasn't one school board district that we had like a higher proportion of it all. It was really similar across the board, which was exciting for us because we knew that we wanted to attack this problem equitably across the board. This is Sunny Burden. Some of you may remember her from our State of the System this year. She shared her story during Dr. Johnson's State of the System address. She spoke about this program as a game changer for her family. It brought her peace of mind to know that her students had access to the internet and that she didn't have this bill on her plate anymore. During a pandemic, that was something that we were really proud to be able to do for her, to bring her a little bit more peace. That was great, but also knowing that her students were able to connect was ultimately the goal. You'll see if you take a look at your district reports that we've got stories like this in every single school in the county at this point. Last but not least, before I turn things over to Jeff, this is really a national issue. This issue of internet connection and internet access is not Hamilton County's story. And this program is just the way that we responded to a national issue in a way that was completely different than any other city in the country, really. So Jeff will tell you a little bit more about that, but we made a commitment. This team made a commitment to making sure that affordability didn't matter. We had the infrastructure in place, and as a result of this program, our students and their families will benefit from generational progress. So, Jeff, take it away.
And I'm sorry for giving you a heart attack that you thought I wasn't here. First of all, just thank you all for giving us the opportunity to go through this with you today, but most especially for your leadership and the support in making this work possible. As our president of the Enterprise Center, Deb Sosha, has worked with communities across the country around issues of digital access and equity. And as she has said again and again, there is no community doing what we're doing. Over this past year, where others were forced to deploy short-term, very expensive solutions, Chattanooga, thanks to the visionary leadership here at Hamilton County Schools, at EPB, from our funders, from our community partners, committed to closing the digital divide in the long term for at least the next decade and beyond. Not only have we been able to offer that long-term solution, again, setting us apart from so many other communities, access for every economically disadvantaged family and student in Hamilton County Schools, but one that offers equity. Most offerings come with a maximum speed. EPB offers a minimum, and a minimum of 100 megabits symmetrical. That's upload and download speeds that are the same, many times faster than other educational and especially the low-cost offerings that others have been forced to deploy. This means that households with more than one child, with parents who are working at home, it didn't have to worry about data, didn't have to worry about who was going to do their homework when. Everyone could work together. It served the whole family. And while 98% of all eligible students do live within EPB's footprint, all means all, and we wanted to make sure there was a solution we could deploy across the board. As we look for longer-term solutions, this means folks who can't receive EPB because they're outside of their legal footprint receive a hotspot with a service provider with good service in their area, unlimited data, so that same thing applies, not worrying about who's doing homework and when, but everybody can get it done together. For leaders across the country, from nonprofits, cities, from to the federal government, to the press, this is seen as a national model. It's a testament to the leadership in this community, in Hamilton County, and it is making a 21st century education available to every student here. As communities reached out to us to ask, how is this possible? How did we do it? We got to tell a story that so often gets told in this community. There was a big community challenge. We came together to figure out a way to solve it together. We didn't think about the reasons not to do something. We figured out how to get around those barriers, break through those walls. When it comes to big challenges, this is a community that can solve them. So in addition to Hamilton County Schools' considerable financial commitment, the initiative has received support from public, private, and corporate partners, including the Hamilton County government, the City of Chattanooga, EPB, the State of Tennessee, and the Tennessee Department of Human Services through the CARES Act, through a grant that the Enterprise Center received and put into this project, from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, from the Smart City Venture Fund, which includes a lot of philanthropic partners, the Footprint Foundation, Community Foundation of Greater Chattanooga, Benwood, and the McClellan Foundation. It's received support from private donors to a substantial degree as well. And I should say that the Benwood Foundation provided some additional support for the implementation team to make sure that we could actually reach everybody. As is so often true, this was more than writing a check for these partners as well. They've been true partners in the work and making sure that this work happened. And something else that separates us a bit from other communities is because we are working with a partner like EPB, this investment in our community stays in our community in more ways than one. These are dollars that are being invested locally, which is, again, sets us apart. The other answer is to how we did it is thanks to an incredible team, a team that always puts families first. Nothing would be possible, certainly without the leadership here, without Dr. Johnson, nor David Wade, the team at EPB, and Deb Sosha and my colleagues at the Enterprise Center who form part of our implementation team. In particular, two other folks, one you've just heard from, one you'll hear from in a second, Evan and Rachel have been absolutely essential and dedicated more time than you could possibly imagine to this project at odd hours of every night for the last 15 months. There are also part of the central office team here, folks like Becca Malott in the data team, Michelle Bettis, who's personally driven hotspots around this county, tracked down families who needed access and done it. EPB, engineers, Ryan Keel's team, and then especially to Kathy Burns, Angela Henry, the call center team. These EdConnect customers are customers. They are treated the same way everybody else who calls in, and same goes for those who call into their schools looking for hotspots. This isn't a low-cost plan with a lower tier of customer. Everyone's treated with that respect, and that's thanks to an incredible customer service team. And that gets to the main point. This program has been designed putting families first. Knowing we're doing something big and difficult for the very first time that any community had ever tried to do it, I think we also built with humility. We built with constant and ongoing evaluation to ensure the program actually met the needs of the folks who needed it. Around our opt-in process, We wanted to ensure that a family getting connected didn't hinge on an email they missed, a phone call they weren't at home for. So families could always reach out to their child's school directly, talk to someone they trusted and knew, and got connected that way, even as we did lots and lots and lots of other outreach. Once folks opted in, all they needed to do was contact EPB. They got reminders about installations regularly. And again, if issues came up, they could call the call center. They were treated just like every other customer. And now they have the opportunity to connect at unrivaled speeds. I've said all means all a couple of times, or at least I meant to. We know that this initiative isn't complete until we reach that last most difficult student to connect. And when we're talking about folks who don't have access, it's a substantial challenge, and it's been a substantial challenge when we consider the social distancing or inability to get to folks over the past year, but nonetheless, 14,000 students connected. To make sure that this all means all actually happened, we did things like build a proprietary status tracking platform, something that made sure that EPB's data, Hamilton County's data could meet in the middle, that we dropped no students from that we were able to use geographic and demographic filtering to identify in real time whether there were places that weren't receiving the service they needed, whether there were schools that needed some additional help from our team to do that outreach. We partnered with UTC's ITG lab to do real-time data visualization and mapping, again, making sure all really meant all. And we reached out to the other communities around the country who were doing this work to share best practices, to make sure there wasn't something as confident as we were in our plan that we were missing. Finally, another thing that we put in place, knowing that this was a big, hairy goal, was ensuring that there was expanded public Wi-Fi access. We know it can never meet the complete needs of a 21st century education, but making sure that there was always a safety net in place in every district around the community. And in fact, we have seen a lot of community use, particularly in locations like our housing authority sites, coin laundries, parks, churches. So it's continued to meet a need at a rate of more than 10,000 user sessions a month. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague Evan from EPB to talk a little bit about sustainability.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, school board members, for allowing us to address, and Councilman Hill, who get to see all the time. And Dr. Johnson, thanks for the opportunity to speak. We really just wanted to reiterate what Jeff and Rachel had talked about, just how big of an impact this is, and how your investments really changed the lives of these families and the students. A year ago, a little over a year ago, as we're discussing this, Dr. Johnson had reached out to EPB about the students going home, and there's a disparity between students that are able to access online schools and those that aren't, and how we're going to solve that. And pretty quickly, as we worked with our community partners, the thought was, well, we need something, not just for the pandemic, but what's something long-term and meaningful and impactful that we could do. So this solution was a 10-year commitment, at least a 10-year commitment, that would provide in-home fast internet access to families. And if you look around the country and see what other cities are doing, they're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on short-term, less reliable solutions, Wi-Fi hotspots and things of that nature that just are really expensive and really have a shelf life. And this is something that will follow the families no matter where they live in our service territory. As they move from place to place, this is something that they can use. Again, I just wanted to tell you how critical your investment is in how it covered the upfront costs to connect and get the equipment into the homes of the families. A lot of those families have never had fiber internet access to their homes, so building out that infrastructure. Also, it helped build the fiber network to Chattanooga public housing units that really didn't have that network in place. It allowed us to work with a lot of local and corporate apartment complexes, particularly those that have subsidized housing that didn't have adequate access. And so working with those complexes to be able to get into there and serve the families. And again, as families move, this is something that follows the family. So families, as long as they're in our service territory, don't have to worry about if I move down the street where I'm going to be able to keep my service. This is something that's going to be consistent for at least the next 10 years for those families that qualify. Again, we're confident that this funding that you all help provide is adequate for at least the next 10 years, and we really appreciate your input and the impact that you've had on these families. I'll turn it back to Jeff. Thanks.
And so as we close out with some next steps, and it has been my privilege in my career in Chattanooga to work alongside so many educators in this school system, and I know the commitment that they make to serving the whole child, and I think this gets to that as well, because the program benefits whole families. It's enough access for everyone. Parents can work, learn from home, use telehealth. We've given examples of that. Other services, be more actively involved in their child's school and education without having to worry about barriers like transportation, the hours they work. It offers a lot of opportunities in that regard. With remote work opportunities and new certifications, and it's like this, the economic benefit of being able to access the potential economic benefits for our school communities, because families are more stable, because new career opportunities are open for their students. We know the impact here has been more than a single bill taken off the plate of our economically disadvantaged families, although we know as well over this past year that alone has been a lifeline. We've heard from families that it's meant groceries, that it's meant being able to not choose between what they can do for their kids. But because we are the first to do this, we also felt it essential to study the impact as we built in these protocols along the way to make sure we're constantly evaluating the work that goes into this research as well. We're working with 2 internationally known EdTech researchers out of Boston College, as well as a local advisory board, to look at this project and how it has an impact on students and families in education and beyond. Answer questions like, how does learning extend beyond the classroom? How does it change what it means to be a teacher? How does it change access to career opportunities, to health, to financial outcomes and change? So much research on the digital divide stems from what is lost when students don't have access. In Hamilton County, we are going to be able to tell a different story. What is instead gained when we are able to provide this access? As this last year has illustrated, the digital divide can have a devastating impact. We deployed a solution that met acute needs over that time period, but we've done so with our eyes on the future, creating a brighter one for every student in Hamilton County, the first community to effectively end the homework gap. It is an incredible accomplishment, something that we will continue to work on and make better, but truly thanks to a community coming together. So it's been my privilege to play just a very small role in that work, and something so important. Again, we thank you for your support and are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
If you guys have a question, if you don't mind, just set your cup there up on the top. That way I'll know. So what I need for you to do now is create some technology here that gets our lights back.
I'll put that right below this on the list.
Yes, thank you. It's equally as important. Yeah, Mrs. Hill.
This is classy with a K, I'd say. I am so thankful to live in Hamilton County, where we have people that work together on really hard problems like this one. And what our community has been able to accomplish with HCS EdConnect is remarkable. The fact that it will last for 10 years, that families are not disconnected over the summer, that we realized as employers in the public and private sector and educators and people all at the same time that internet was really important. It's not just about Netflix. It's about actual living our lives. And that we got past all the hard why you can't and just focused on the how can we. And I'm also very thankful that that is becoming the culture that I am seeing in Hamilton County schools and in Hamilton County at large. And just a matter of privilege, I want to share with you guys from the meeting today with Commissioner Penny Schwinn. So I was able to be there, and it was humbling to see people in leadership roles, our Senator Bo Watson, Representative Hazelwood, Representative Smith, leaders from our business community, all around a table talking about our kids, our students, and how we're going to help them be ready for what's next for them. And you know, Commissioner Schwinn asked us, how do you set up successful partnerships? And this HCS EdConnect is one of the premier examples of that kind of partnership. And I left that meeting so buoyed, and I shared this on my social media because I thought it was so important. She finished that meeting and said that what we're doing in Chattanooga and Hamilton County is important not just for our students, but for students all across the state, and in fact, for students across the entire nation, because the nation is looking at Hamilton County schools and looking at how our students have tripled the number of early post-secondary courses that they earned from this year to last year. Tripled in a pandemic. When we want to talk about academics, which is what this board is here to talk about, that's a heck of a win. And a big part of why that was possible was because of work like this with HCS EdConnect. So I thank you all very much for the way that you did that heavy lift. And I will say sometimes, as a board member, I sometimes feel a little bit out of the loop on the early stages of things. So I definitely would invite Dr. Johnson, your team, to loop us in as early as possible. There are so many really amazing things happening in our community for the benefit of our students, and we obviously play an integral role in that. So thank you very much.
Mr. Perez.
I just want to reiterate the same thing, Jeff, to the team of the Enterprise Center, to EPB, to Dr. Johnson, and the Hamilton County team here, because I know we've repeated it, and yet I think it can be missed that what we've done is truly unique, probably nationally. I would not be surprised that there isn't another community that was able to respond in the way that we responded in allowing every one of their students to be very quickly connected. If there was, great, you know, the more the better. But it's just truly, you know, in a year of unprecedented responses to an unprecedented event, we were also unprecedented in this, and I want to thank you. I know that figuring it out and problem solving was huge, and I really, you know, it's easy to miss how blessed we've been in spite of all the difficulties this year, often because we are not aware of the difficulties that other cities and counties had to deal with in trying to connect students online. And this isn't perfect, and there's a lot to learn, and there's still a digital literacy divide, and there's still a digital homework divide that has to be worked on and improved on. But the fact that we were able to connect, and it's not just connecting, it's not just making internet available, it's making a router available, it's connecting that router to these 14,000 students' homes, it's helping families learn how to connect to that router, it's taking phone calls when we all know when the router's down, we don't know what to do. It's all these things to 14,000 students and everybody else that was already being served. And so I don't think we can miss that this didn't happen in a vacuum where all of a sudden internet was made available. It happened because of the tireless hours spent by incredible teams on multiple sides saying we've got to solve this, and by funding partners, because we can't dismiss them, who also stepped up and said we're providing this. And again, reiterating the fact that this isn't for, hey, we got through COVID, it's these families will now have access to this for 10 years. and hopefully beyond moving forward. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who participated in that.
Mrs. Thurman.
There's only one group of people that are not glad you did this, and that was those kids that were using this as an excuse not to do their work. A lot of parents called me and thanked me.
The router is down, Rhonda.
But anyway, I do appreciate a lot of those families from up in my district, up in District 1. And I really, really appreciate the work that you've done. But a lot of parents are very appreciative. Like I say, some of their kids, not so much. But I am certainly thankful. I do appreciate all your hard work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you again for all your work and your effort and the whole team. It really was amazing. I've told my kids there are no more snow days now either.
Now you've got a bunch of folks mad at me. I appreciate it. Sincerely, thank you all very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that now brings us to our delegations, and I'm going to take just a little bit of executive privilege here, if you guys don't mind, and I'm going to let Dr. Steve Highlander kind of jump line here and let him go first. But before we do, because Dr. Highlander, I'm quite certain you need to hear this, I'm going to go ahead and read this delegation statement before we get started.
This isn't your moment.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the district office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent. If you are criticizing an individual employee, I will interrupt you and ask you to refrain. If you continue to criticize individual employees, or if your remarks are in error or are becoming repetitive, I may interrupt you and ask you to sit down. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. You may begin when you are ready. Dr. Highlander, you have the mic.
The most difficult thing for me is the 5 minute limit. And
Amen.
I will say to you, I love every one of you as younger brothers and sisters. Now, Joe, just a little bit younger, but I do. You know, my siblings and I didn't always agree. We fussed sometimes, but we truly loved each other, and we still do. And I love each and every one of you, and I want to do what I can. I tell you, without Mrs. Ford, I would never have had any technology. Maybe you all are good at it. She kept me going. If it hadn't been for her, I would have been without it. One thing I will say to the public, although we have different perspectives, we have different views, each and every one of the board members that I've served with, the ones presently, and I look back to Joe Galloway and my brother, little man, that I love, so many people, all of these people care about children and serve, and that's what makes us brothers and sisters. And my friend Jeffrey Wilson, I attended the last meeting that he had, and Dr. Johnson, I would like to do what he did in his closing. He gave a closing prayer. And may I give a prayer for this board and this leadership team?
Sure.
Dear Father, we thank you for each and every one of these people who care about young people, who care about children. Lord, give them your strength, give them your wisdom. Lord, thank you so much for the blessings of being able to work with young people. Thank you for my 40-some-odd years in the classroom, and thank you for the opportunity to serve others. These things we ask in our Lord's name. Amen. Thank you all so much. And
Dr. Highlander, just stay right there.
Dr. Highlander, I want to sincerely thank you for your service. I know you cast the fifth vote for me, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. I don't know if you always appreciated it, but and I will say this: I'm going to more frequently attend county commission meetings, looking for eggs and sausage that you bring. But we'll absolutely miss you, Dr. Highlander.
I will say I had not necessarily planned. I had several constituents that asked me to turn the resume. When I didn't get it on the first go-around, my wife said, "You disappointed?" I said, "No, I'm happy to serve on the school board." And then the second round came, and somebody else had a plan above mine. So,
Dr. Steve Highlander, in appreciation for your commitment and service to the Hamilton County Board of Education from September 2014 to June 2021, we want to present this to you. from Dr. Brian Johnson, from myself, from Mr. Tucker McClendon, Jenny Hill, Caritza Jones, Marco Perez, Tiffany Robinson, Joe Smith, and Miss Rhonda Thurman. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Love you, Dave. Thank you all very much.
I don't want to miss an opportunity.
And Steve,
to say
don't
something.
worry. Joe will keep Sherry busy. Joe Smith.
Dr. Highlander, before you leave, I also want to thank you personally. I think you, people don't know the encouragement that you give. I'm new to the board, and you have continuously been an encouragement to me. You're a true pastor, and you've pastored our board in many ways. Thank you.
You were an encouragement to me.
That's what I was fishing for. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Go ahead, Ms. Thurman.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right. That will bring us to Mr. Frank Ramseur. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir. We do count it an honor to present here just for a moment, and maybe a special providential blessing to follow Dr. Highlander there. Dr. Johnson, Chairman Wingate, and Hamilton County School Board members. I'm Frank Ramseur, one of the leaders of Calvary Chapel, Chattanooga. I'm here today with several friends, two dear colleagues. You'll hear from Ann Roth in just a moment. I do want to begin by making it altogether clear that what our intention is here today, and what our intention has been, is nothing in any way sort of combative or confrontational. We've not come in any combative spirit or posture. We're here to make no demands. We're here not to make any threats, push any political agenda. We have come simply to represent and give voice to, I think, a significant and growing number of citizens, largely parents of school-age children, who are aware of Planned Parenthood's sort of reemergence in our city. And as you'll hear momentarily, I think are appropriately concerned, and I think that'll be clear in just a moment. It is our hope that after just our brief moment here, you may be affirmed and confirmed that as it relates to sex education in our public schools, Tennessee state-approved family life curriculum with its focus on abstinence and character development is clearly superior to anything Planned Parenthood can provide. Dr. Johnson and the school board, we are simply here to respectfully and humbly convey that we are aware and we are concerned. And to that end, we started a petition, which we'll read here briefly, to sort of validate the broad and increasing support for what Hamilton County schools currently provide by way of sex education to our children. So with that, I'm going to let Ann Roth share a few more things.
Thank you. As a former public school teacher here in Hamilton County for 13 years, working in 4 different schools throughout the area, I have personally seen and known teachers, guidance counselors, and parents who work together to raise children of character. We believe and support current Tennessee school health law that teaches children how to have appropriate relationships and boundaries, to teach students how to form pro-social habits that enable students to develop healthy relationships, create strong marriages, and form safe and stable future families. Research on teen pregnancies throughout our state shows that numbers are continuing to drop. The teen birth rate in Tennessee has declined 68% between 1991 and 2019. The teen pregnancy rate, which includes all pregnancies rather than just those that resulted in a birth, has also fallen steeply by 56% between 1988 and 2013. In Hamilton County, teen birth rates have also dropped across all racial groups. Between 2010 and 2016, we've seen a 34% decline. So we're seeing numbers steadily declining, which would only point to a success in the current family life curriculum that our schools are teaching. Planned Parenthood has already hired a health educator here in Chattanooga, whose job summary, and I quote to you, is to conduct educational programs and related activities designed to provide the Planned Parenthood of Tennessee service area with age-appropriate reproductive and sexual health information and skills.
One of their job responsibilities will be, and I quote again, to assess the suitability and develop a sustainable peer education program for high school youth in Chattanooga. According to the National Sex Education Standards that Planned Parenthood uses for their programs, children in grades 11 and 12 will be asked to describe the potential impacts of power and privilege within romantic or sexual relationships, i.e. age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, immigration status, and ability. Not only is this a direct implication of critical theory and intersectionality, but it also puts teenagers at risk of playing into the supposed power struggles and assigning roles in a relationship of an oppressor and a victim, only increasing the chances of emotional and sexual abuse. So as taxpayers, we're asking you, Dr. Johnson, the members of the school board, to not allow Planned Parenthood to have any direct or indirect influence on the curriculum used by Hamilton County schools. Teachers and guidance counselors are already impacting our students. It is evident in the recent statistics of a decrease in teenage pregnancy. We want to maintain our values and continue to put emphasis on families to educate their children in sexual health and allow parents to make the decisions for when it is time to have the more detailed conversations regarding gender and sexuality at home.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Next, we'll have Brandy Howard.
My name is Brandy Howard. I have 2 students currently enrolled in Hamilton County Public Schools. They're both in high school. They've been in public school their entire school careers, and we are public school supporters. I want to address the newly passed legislation, HB 580 and SB 620, prohibiting the teaching of a list of concepts, and I believe you've probably already read that list. But first, I wanted to take a second and answer a question that was asked at the last meeting. Where have parents been before now? Why are we just now showing up at school board meetings? I would say we've been classroom volunteers, room parents, team moms, PTO, moms and dads. We believed that our time was best spent doing those things while representatives and elected officials managed the running of our schools. So we did what we thought was our part and trusted professionals to do theirs. Then our world changed, of course, when COVID hit. We all became some version of homeschool teachers or facilitators, like it or not. While virtual school was less than ideal, it required parents to be more engaged and aware of what's being taught in our schools. Unfortunately, it wasn't always a good surprise what we saw. For many of us, it was a shock. Some people may say, shame on us. Parents have been hands-off as far as the content and material being taught to our kids. We thought they were being taught skills and facts. We were surprised to learn that sometimes, maybe too often, our students are being taught what to believe. They're being taught to believe an opinion, what they should think, instead of consistently being taught how to evaluate data and develop their own conclusions. Parents across the country have realized that their children are being taught inappropriate sexual content, not specifically in Hamilton County yet, thank goodness, and let's continue that, right? Students are taught anti-police, anti-authority messages, divisiveness, and that our country and her systems are inherently bad. That was my personal experience. What a disappointment for a public school supporter. So we now realize we have to be more engaged. We know that our state's passed legislation prohibiting the teaching of a list of concepts based on a critical theory framework, and we have questions. How will the existing materials and curricula, including supplemental materials, be evaluated to determine where these concepts are being taught and remove them? Will you invite parents to be involved in that process? I've heard the quick response from local officials that this legislation won't affect Hamilton County, this stuff's not being taught here. And it sounded dismissive, almost as though it would be silly to even ask the question. But I want to tell you why parents are asking. If they haven't had personal experience like ours, parents, grandparents, and concerned citizens have seen reports that Hamilton County teachers go through white privilege training, where messages include that white privilege is a legacy and a cause of racism. White privilege exists because of historic, enduring, systemic racism and bias. That message, if taught to students, would violate item number 2 of this new legislation. We've seen classic texts replaced with books like Just Mercy, written by a social justice activist, The Hate You Give, written by an activist and inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. Both texts violate items 8, 10, and 11 in this bill. An honest assessment must be done. So now we have engaged parents, newly passed bill, questions about whether or not our district is in compliance, and parents want a voice. When making decisions about our schools, we hear you talk about what's best for students, a lot about what teachers will think. We ask that you remember to consider what parents want for our children. We entrust the schools with the education of our kids, but parents' rights don't stop at the school building doors. Parents still bear primary responsibility for the care, well-being, and education of our kids. So let's set aside the automatic denials that this stuff doesn't happen. Instead, let's put tools in place to identify and eliminate these flawed teachings, work together in good faith to ensure our children are not taught that their future is somehow limited by their original circumstances or the shade of their skin. Let's talk about hope, unity, opportunity. Teach our kids to work hard to achieve big dreams for their future, for our community, and for our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Angie Nunley.
See if I can do this again. I'm expanding on both of their topics on HB 580. To quote directly from the bill, this amendment does not prohibit a public school from including as part of a course of instruction or in a curriculum or instructional program, or from allowing teachers, other employees of the LEA or public charter school to use supplemental instructional materials that include 1, the history of an ethnic group as described in textbooks and instructional materials adopted in accordance with present law concerning textbooks and instructional materials. 2, the impartial discussion of controversial aspects of history. 3, the impartial instruction on the historical oppression of a particular group of people based on race, ethnicity, class, nationality, religion, or geographic region. 4, historical documents that are permitted under present law, such as national motto, national anthem, the state and federal constitutions, state and federal laws, and Supreme Court decisions. These are core to the CRT program. As Ron DeSantis said, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it is still a pig. These items are in direct opposition to what Brandy said. That is the first part of the bill. Who decides what is either impartial or appropriate? The parents have not been included in this decision. If anything, the school board's response to COVID has shown that teachers are allowed and possibly encouraged to pressure either the TEAs or their personal agenda in the classroom. There are reports of teachers questioning students about their vaccination status and berating them to the point of bullying, which other students picked up and carried forward throughout the halls during the day. Per the TEA's website, their mission is to protect and advocate for our students, our profession, and our members to create great public schools that prepare everyone for success in global society. It continues by stating that TEA's work, quote, centers around our core values: democracy, equal opportunity, a just society, strong profession, partnerships, advocacy, and collaboration action. Democracy is stated as we believe that all voices should be heard and protected in the pursuit of the compromise and consensus essential to the common good. Again, referring back to the prior example, Equal opportunity. We believe that access to free quality public education is the gateway to equal opportunity in our society. We want quality public education too. Let us help. Parents want to help. We want to participate. A just society necessary to respect the worth and dignity of every individual. What about American beliefs? Why are these being attacked? Strong profession. We believe that quality teacher preparation, high professional standards, and collaboration provide us with the expertise to educate children and protect our profession. Again, let the parents work with you. We want to. Partnerships. Working with both stakeholder and other entities who share our values are essential to promoting educational excellence in Tennessee. We believe these partnerships add value to our association and the profession, realizing that they have the potential to add new sources of learning, strength, and resources. We'll come back to this. Who are the collaborative actions with? Who are the partners? We deserve to have all of this information and a say in the level of involvement the partners have. We deserve 100% transparency in this. The TEA has a link on their website titled Racial and Social Justice for All, including available resources. They offer a petition to grow the movement for racial justice in education, including campaigns that require schools to offer ethics studies, efforts to change school names, honoring Confederate leaders, students, and educators, mobilizing to include voices in diverse ethnicities that have contributed to U.S. history and cultures. These leaders are part of the foundation of America. Why is there such an effort to erase history? Links to BLM at school. Build power in your community. According to the BLM website, they are, quote, trained Marxist. Marxism creates division based on social classes. This leads into socialism, then communism. Children are not inherently racist. Don't create a problem where there isn't one. In general, parents are okay with sex ed being taught in high school, never in elementary. However, I recommend that the school board looks within the community at places such as Calvary Church, St. Augustine, Berks United Methodist. These are places that value the sanctity of life and the innocence of our children. As public servants elected by parents, you have a responsibility to share your stance on defining principles of educating our children.
Thank you, Ms. Nunley. Next, we'll have Lene Taylor.
Hi, my name is Lene Glass. I'm here representing Moms for Social Justice. My husband is a teacher, which makes the topic I'd like to talk about all the more close to my heart. I want to speak regarding the issue of including critical race theory in Hamilton County's K-12 curriculum. I'm in a privileged position. I can walk away from this school board meeting knowing that the narrative that will be taught to my white children paints their ancestors as the heroes in our history books and absolves them of any responsibility towards the BIPOC communities that have been and continue to be marginalized in our nation. My children don't have to worry about whether they will find affordable housing or be targeted by law enforcement based on the color of their skin. The systems currently in place in our country work in their favor. That said, I believe it is the duty of my children's teachers to challenge their worldview and to ask them the hard questions, even and especially if it means facing up to the ways they benefit from societal structures that are based on white supremacy. We should value honesty, right? Then why are we afraid of telling our children the truth about how we got to where we are now in our country? If the motivation behind choosing what is included or excluded in curriculum is to reduce division, then I believe it is in the best interest of our kids to shed light on the way systemic racism impacts their Black and brown peers. We cannot truly come together to create better systems and tear down oppressive power structures until we allow our children to see history in all of its complexity. By inhibiting the teaching of critical race theory, we are doing an incredible disservice not only to our children, but also to our nation. There are future policymakers currently sitting in your classrooms. I know some of you are opposed to critical race theory based on religious reasons. As someone who grew up in the evangelical Christian church, I urge you to consider whether you are truly loving your neighbors, who you presumably believe to be made in the image of God, if you are not prepared to come face to face with and grieve the whole truth about the way racism operates in our country. If you're opposed to critical race theory being taught because your argument is that it is racist towards white people, I ask that you really think about your definition of racism. There are power imbalances at play in the United States that put white people at an advantage. By pushing back against children being taught about these power imbalances, you are indirectly perpetuating the harmful systems that put people of color at a disadvantage in our society. Choosing to teach kids colorblindness does not create unity, it breeds inequity. And lastly, if the mantra you live by is faith over fear, this is the time to demonstrate that through your actions. By fighting against critical race theory being in schools, you are not teaching our children to be critical thinkers when they encounter content that might be new and challenging for them. You are teaching them that they are entitled to whatever narrative makes them and you most comfortable. Do not be fearful of the hard truths that our kids may learn as a result of thinking more deeply about how racism manifests itself in all its insidious forms in our country. The truth is what sets us free. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Dixon.
I'm with Tennessee Protective Services. That thing's loud. And let me pull this up here. We want to provide protection officers for the schools instead of having security guards. The way that we have it is, why secure something when you can protect the kids, when you can protect the facility, the teachers, everybody in there? It makes simple because the liability falls on us, not the school system, not the citizens. We have the insurance, we have the capabilities, we have the training for everybody to be set up to be able to protect every school the way that it's supposed to be protected and protect the children that go to these schools. Our insurance is there. We're able to have whatever we need. Our officers are all trained to handle anything that they need to handle. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us down to our consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion to approve that, do we have anyone that needs to read the board member disclaimer statement? If you do, please do so at this time.
I will.
Go ahead, Mr. Perez.
I declare that I have a spouse and sisters-in-law who work in the school systems, and that the board's vote on anything having to do with policies or budgets or anything along those lines, nothing particular that stands out in this agenda, but may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
Anyone else? Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I have a relative who works in the school system, but I will promise to make my vote in the best, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? The best for the school district, what's best for the school district. That's what, I guess that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Mrs. Robinson?
I declare that I have a family member who works for the school system and that the board's vote on pretty much everything may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
Anyone else? Mrs. Jones?
I declare that I have a family member who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, et cetera, may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Did you get that, Ms. Ford?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any items we'd like to take a look at? Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I just want to pull the 9, F1, just the math curriculum, please.
Okay.
And I'd like to pull 9D5, the insurance.
Mr. Smith?
I think this is the appropriate place. Again, I want to make sure that we don't miss.
It's not on there.
It's
not on there. It's not there.
Do we, you know, I was told that it'd been submitted, but it has not.
Not to the board.
Okay.
We're working on it, and we'll
Okay.
make sure that the emergency approval is taken
Okay.
care of.
I just want to make sure we didn't
Cheerleaders
miss
for the
that.
middle school,
Yes,
we're gonna
yes.
take care of. This is the
Okay.
last
I'm missing one.
Anyone else? So we have Mrs. Thurman's item, Mr. Perez's item. Do we have anything else? Y'all good? Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Okay, Mrs. Thurman.
Okay, yeah, I just want, while some of the parents are here, some of the parents' groups are here, we're going to be looking at some math curriculum, and if some of you want to see some of the math, like you say, some parents saw what the math was, especially elementary and middle, what the math looked like, including Dr. Johnson saw what the math looked like. So if you would like to have a say-so about what the math curriculum looks like in elementary school, this is something that parents can get involved in as well. I know I did back when my daughter was in the 5th grade. She's now 32. I met all over the county trying to stop everyday math and connected math before I got on the school board, to no avail. But we ended up getting rid of it a few years later. This is better than that, but it's not much better. And I just wanted you to be aware that that is coming up. So you can say that's exactly the reason I had to put my daughter in private school, was because of the math we were using at the time she was here. Like I say, this one's some better, but it's not a whole lot. So just parents groups, heads up, just wanted you to know.
And just for clarity's sake, it's for this coming up year, 21, 22. The state will, it's an adoption year, so we'll go through that process. Dr. Parker and her team will lead that. They'll engage parents like they did. Dr. Parker, you may want to real briefly give some context around how you approach that.
So our state is in the process right now of revising the standards that are and the expectations for math K-12. And so what is on the board agenda tonight is to help us with the gap year next year, so that we can go through the adoption process and not have lacking materials or no materials. This is a year we're using ESSER funds to carry us through, so that adoption can take place and the materials can align with the writing of the new standards.
Yeah, Neely, just for a reference, you were probably, I don't know if you were in the school system then or not, you were there.
I was.
And the elementary between the 5th grade and the middle school, the kids got to middle school and found out that nobody had learned to divide or multiply fractions. So here they were trying to learn algebra, nobody had them, so everybody was in a panic. I don't know how that happened, but there was a huge gap there. And I just don't want things like that to happen again, because it did happen and it was a disaster, an absolute disaster. And so we were talking the other day about math changes, well, the curriculum changes and about the Britannicas, but still, those Britannicas you had still told you who won the World Series in 1956. It didn't change. They still, math has not changed. Okay, it's not like you have to update math and say, oh, we have a new way. Well, they did do it. Say we have a new way of doing it. It's not any better, because we didn't invent math. We discovered it, and so it's worked every year for 1,000 years. So we need to remember that. But the way we're teaching it now is not getting it. But anyway, that's just my opinion. So I've had it that way since 19. Matter of fact, some of my comments were, Jenny was asking the other day, was I going to go and do something about it or be on the board, be on the committee or whatever? No, I've been there, done that. I even have some of my comments on Congress, actually, because it went that far with Peyton Wilcock in Texas. But anyway, so I've been there, done that, spent years doing it, and I hope some of the new parents pick up the mantle, because I have kids in elementary school and grandkids. I sure would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurman, you want a motion to put that back on? Okay. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ford.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. All right, Mr. Perez.
So I was actually looking on our agenda online to see if there was any documentation about the insurance contract renewals. So can you just tell me if
should be on
anything?
your-
Okay, sorry, I missed it. Well, and even for the public. Is there anything new or important to note on that?
Can you hear me? Is that, got it. The only thing we're changing on the stop loss coverage, we took it from a $350,000 limit to $375,000, and that just covers when our medical claims.
You have to pull it to you. Pull it to you, sorry.
Pull it to you.
Sorry.
He said, quiet.
We raised it from 350 to 375 to kind of try to balance with the rate increase,
Okay.
but everything else is the same.
Okay. I brought this up with you all, and at some point, you know, and I may just be one voice, I have a concern about the reimbursement plan for dental, only in that teachers with multiple children are expected to pay out a lot of money and wait a few weeks to get paid back. So
in July, don't get me speak to this.
So-
In July, we're going to bring a
Yes.
benefits update, and that's one of the items that we'll.
Yeah, we are evaluating many different options for dental because we understand that that's a concern. I went for a crown the other week and it was $1,300 out of pocket. Many of our employees can't afford it. We actually have an employee in our department who hasn't been to have her teeth cleaned because of the out of pocket. So we're exploring other options.
Well, and that's my concern. The point of benefits is to, obviously, to keep our teachers healthy and the
Absolutely.
opportunity. And if
Yep.
they're not going to do it or send their kids to get teeth cleanings because they're afraid, then we're going to deal with a bigger problem down
Yeah,
the
so
road.
we're looking at additional preventative measures, health and well-being of all of our employees in all aspects. So we'll have more information soon.
Thank you.
And just for the record around dental specifically, because we've had a lot of conversation around dental, we're probably looking at a situation where there will be an option, because technically the reimbursement is usually a better benefit for the employee when you can afford the out-of-pocket. The problem is the affording the out-of-pocket. So we'll probably be in an optional stance where you can choose, but Penny and her team are digging into that.
As I've learned this week, wisdom teeth seem to be covered nowhere. And so, you know, and I've learned they're also really expensive to pull out. And so, you know, yeah. I'll take care of them at home on my own, and we'll figure it out. Come on, kid, lie down. All right. No, thank you. That's all I have. So.
Okay, anything else on that item? Mr. Perez, do you
Yeah.
have a motion to
So
approve that?
I approve. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Ford.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. All right, so I believe that drops us down to administrative business matters. We did, other than those two items that we pulled. All right, so that brings us down. Our first item there would be the COVID reimbursement for schools. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved?
We have a second?
Second. Sorry, Steve's not here. He usually does this.
All right, any discussion around that? Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Chairman Wingate?
Yes. Next item there would be the musical instrument sanitation and repair request. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Just, if I could, for public sake, this is an amended item that we're requesting. We'll use GP dollars initially, reimburse it with ESSER, about $200,000 for our instrument repairs and sanitization in particular, sanitation in particular in, you know, a COVID year. So much needed, really honestly doesn't get us all the way where we need to be, but again, a step in the right direction.
Dr. Johnson, how much do you think it'll take us to get to where we need to be with that? I mean, as far as sanitation, will this take care of all the sanitation?
This will take care of all the sanitation, about $500,000 to address the repairs. I mean, instruments are just very, very, very expensive. Another thing, just as an FYI, and this isn't necessarily for this, but one of the things we're also looking at is we know that our arts programs and our athletic programs suffered this year, as many small businesses did, and I know our program's not small business, but they suffered with gate receipts and the ability to take in funds as they usually do. Those things support and undergird the program. So Justin and his team we're working through a model, in essence, to try to help offset some of that. But again, this is a step to address the arts needs in regards to just sanitizing our instruments and get them up to par.
Mrs. Hill?
Thank you. I appreciate that Giant Steps is a local vendor, and I would like to better understand the process of awarding this $200,000 contract to them. I mean, they had an existing relationship with us, but this is a significant amount of money, especially if we move forward. So help me understand what other local vendors we have that could be doing this work and why Giant Steps was chosen.
I'm happy to speak to that at a high level, and Claire would be even better in speaking to more specifics. There has been a prior relationship. They're one of very few in the county that have done very good work in the past historically, and so that's the context. There's very few people that do this, and so that's how they operate. Most of our schools, when they've had, because frankly we haven't been positioned to provide at scale this type of support. So most of our schools have used them on an individual basis, and we've had funds we've been able to use it. So that's the standpoint of the context in which Giant Steps was used. It's been our vendor that we've partnered with for this.
So tonight, help me make sure that I am understanding. My understanding is we're approving a $200,000 sanitation and repair budget, but the $500,000 that you brought up that would complete the repairs is not included in this. But I see we also have a general approval for Giant Steps for the remainder of, or for the next academic year. So, like, when we get into this 300,000, like, we need to make sure we're really doing our due diligence on contracts like these.
Absolutely. So the intent would be to do this 200,000. And again, so we know school's going to start in August. I mean, band's already rolling. We'll be rolling here pretty soon, and so there's some urgency to get it done. As absolutely as we go forward, frankly speaking, we haven't had money to put into the arts or programs in general. If we're in a position where we can go forward, put these kinds of resources and funds in it, absolutely. There'll be an even broader net cast, but we haven't had the volume or capability to be able to do this as a district. So because of ESSER, we're positioned a lot better to be able to do that, and this is a small beginning step in which we absolutely will strengthen.
So in approving the continued relationship with Giant Steps for the 2021-2022 school year, this is the as-needed contract that we'll be approving. The as-needed agreement.
Absolutely, but we would bring back forward to the board, just like this 200,000, we bring back forward to say this is what we're looking at doing.
Okay.
To get approval. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Of that 200,000, you mentioned that it's going to take care of all the sanitation. What's the break? I mean, how much is the sanitation going to cost? What is that going to leave us to do at least some of the repair?
We'll have to get that answer specifically. A big chunk of it will be sanitation, and then we'll be able to do some repair. We won't be able to get at the level that we need to. Again, the $500,000 number was really to really dig into our repair cost. So it won't be significant, but we can get the exact break. They're still working through it. We're trying to expedite it so that when we're ready to roll, they can push the instruments out.
So let's pretend for a moment that half of it's going to be sanitation, and I'm just
probably
pulling
more.
that figure out.
Yeah.
But how will you determine how you allocate what's left per school for those repairs? How will that work?
I can speak to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yep, so we're gonna use, enrollment data from the 2019-2020 school year, because we know enrollment in our instrument courses dropped off significantly this past year. And we're gonna do a per pupil allocation with the remaining funds.
Okay.
So to sanitize an instrument is roughly $50 per instrument, so, and we're running through those numbers now.
The only thing I'd push back a little bit is when you say per enrollment, you know, you got some schools that are not doing a lot, but if you're gonna base that on enrollment instead of the number of students that are actually participating.
No, that's right.
I'm so sorry that I.
Yeah, okay.
Enrollment is
Okay.
in participation.
Enrollment in instrument.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And for
And it-
instance, if a student participates in 2 courses, we're counting that.
I
student.
got you. Okay,
One-
that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion.
Ms. Thurman?
Yeah, this is a time, I think, we were talking about partnerships with people. I think this is where some of we can ask, put it out there that, you know, we need some instruments for schools. I'm sure there's people may have a tuba sitting around their house they'd like to get out of the way. You know, I mean, that we would take, you know, we could take some,
Quality instruments.
I mean, just some, even if they don't own them and they're not, you know, you can do away with them or whatever. But just to see what's out there, we might be surprised. I mean, a friend of mine, his wife has Alzheimer's, that played the flute, you know, donate a flute to someone. So, you know, there's all kinds of things out there that people may have that if they knew the school needed them, might be glad to donate them. I think it's a partnership that maybe we could look at.
Mr. Perez?
So just on the enrollment comment, to add to Mr. Smith's comments, I would also think of the fact that in some schools, there may be a higher percentage of students that own their own instrument and care for their own instrument than others. And so, to a degree, that may be something you want to take into account as you allocate, because some schools where they don't need as many funds may end up getting more funds than they actually need.
And just to be clear, generally speaking, as a district, since I've been there as a district, we've not been able to do this wholesale. What we've done is allocated fund, well, frankly, what we've done is replaced fees, the fee structure, and schools have their own money and they use that to do. So I want to go back to a question you asked so that I was clear in answering for full transparency. There may still be a school that goes to Giant Step on an individual basis to do something systemically. If we have something that's, you know, going to be at this level, obviously we're going to bring it forward to the board. But we haven't been able to do this, and so obviously if there's any year to sanitize instruments, this is the one. And so we're fortunate to be able to do it. So
Just one other kind of caveat, let's keep that at the top of our priority list, and you know, because probably to do that sanitation is going to take a huge chunk of that 200,000, which is going to leave just very little to do repairs, and you know, we got schools that's chomping at the bit to use their instruments, but they don't work.
Back when I was growing up, we didn't sanitize instruments, Joe.
You
Shared mouthpieces, didn't you?
What's his mouthpiece off?
I remember being in 6th grade and the trumpet leaking. And I didn't grow up in Hamilton County, guys, so this is like a thing across all public school districts, okay?
well, let me say this, like,
We're ahead of the curve, is what I'm saying.
absent COVID, in a humid, we're a humid state, absent COVID, the ability for mold to build up, et cetera, is significant, even absent COVID. So, anyways, we need to do this.
Ms. Hill?
So that, bringing up mold and instruments is kind of where I was headed, but I really do wonder sanitation versus cleaning. And Joe, you've really been integral in this conversation. What is the cost difference between a sanitized instrument and a professionally cleaned instrument? Has anybody, because here's what I'm thinking about germs and viruses. Like, we know that COVID doesn't last forever on this surface. So it's not going to last forever on my saxophone, right? So cleaning versus, like, if sanitizing is 50 and cleaning is 30, then we have more money for repairs.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the $50 covers the cleaning and sanitization
Right.
of the instrument.
Well, I just wonder, like,
You wasn't in Mr. Ransom class at Arts and Sciences?
no, I'm
Yeah,
a
you
band
missed it.
failure. I played the flute for 2
You
weeks, but
clean
couldn't make
and
a sound.
sanitize at the same time.
You clean and sanitize at the same. Okay.
And then a lot of band teachers teach you that. Like I remember Mr. Ransom would teach them how to shine their instruments. I played percussion, but he would teach us how to maintain the drum heads and the mallet. I mean, we were taught those things. And he even taught them how to clean. Like they would thread. I remember threading that thing through there. I didn't like the
Okay,
trumpets
so
and
cleaning
thread.
and sanitizing happens because I mean,
Yeah.
sanitizing is like a buzzword right now, and we'll just spend some.
Well, I don't know, Jenny. In my house, it's the same thing. I use Clorox and everything. So everything getting sanitized and cleaned at the same time.
I'd love for you to check out my leftovers and see what you.
All right, we have anything else on that item? All right, Mrs. Ford.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right, that brings us to our board matters. First item there would be position requests. The first one there is student security officers. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, do we have any discussion? Mrs. Jones, and then Mr. Perez, and Ms. Thurman.
No, I don't have any discussion. That was left from.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Perez.
So, I was privileged to be at the county commission meeting for 2.5 hours, to hear some of this discussion. And for the public's, opportunity to hear, I think what was frustrating of the long discussion to me was that everybody seems to agree that we all want as much and as many ways as possible to secure our schools, and that there is no, at least deep division in how we think we can achieve that. And so I know that there's been an opportunity to move forward. The commission seemed very open, from my perspective, to us not only hiring the 9 that we were asked for on Monday, and I know there's some changes there, but also to growing that if we find that that's an easier way in partnership with the sheriff's office as well. So I want to say from my perspective, and somebody who was there or the media or somebody can say, well, that wasn't our perspective. But I think just for the purpose of the public, there isn't this tension and division. There is a desire to figure out how we best protect and keep all of our students safe, and there seems to be a willingness to a degree on allowing both parties to maximize to the best of their efforts whichever method works the best. And so, and Dr. Robertson can probably improve on what I said, but I want us as a board to know that, and I want the public to know that as well.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yeah, Justin, I was gonna ask you, can you give us a Reader's Digest version of condensed version of what happened at the commission meeting, so we're all clear about what's going on here?
Sure. So, County Commission approved the mayor's budget as presented, which has in it 32 SROs. The sheriff committed to hiring 32 SROs, which is a really positive step in the right direction. At the end of the conversation, there was an indication there might be some additional funds through tax revenue that was unexpected that we could then come back and, as we're hiring additional SSOs, request additional funds for those positions. So the amendment to this memo basically reflects that, saying in addition, we can hire up to 25 pending county commission approval. That way we don't have to come back to you guys at every moment and request those positions. We would show you that adjustment in a quarterly, budget update.
So we have the money to hire the 25 that.
No, ma'am, we have money for 19
19, and then
currently. And then this is a request that if the county commission provides additional funding.
If the county commission, okay.
To hire up to 25 more.
All right, okay.
The words, if I may.
Okay, and that depends on, it depends on whether if the sheriff can hire the SROs, there'll be SROs, but if we have to fill in with SSOs, is that?
No, but the
or
the
did-
sheriff's budget is set, so he has the funding to do the 32 and his support staff. What they're saying is if tax revenue continues to come in higher than what was projected, that there may be some additional funds that we could then request to hire more
Okay.
SSOs.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Jones and then Mr. Go, you finished, Ms. Thurman?
No, I've had a couple more questions, I forgot.
Sorry.
Tied up in that. And I think everyone got the same email there were a few questions I had about SSOs, just to be clear. Do they have the authority to make arrests?
So, fine point on this, they don't have the authority to arrest, they have the authority to detain a, I don't know what you call them, a person. I was gonna say suspect, and I was like, that's probably not the right word. To detain someone until a responding agency, and it's not always gonna be the sheriff's office. In Red Bank, it would be the Red Bank Police Department until a responding agency can respond and take the person for booking.
Yeah. And another point that was brought out, there was the second thing is the liability. Does that put the liability over on us?
So when we discussed this, about a year and a half ago, when we first approved up to the 10 that we initially hired, we talked to Scott about this, and essentially school safety, the liability is on us regardless. We have, the certification that our insurance covers us for. The officers, they've been trained, received all the certifications that they need. So from a liability standpoint, we're covered for the officers.
Okay, so there's not anything additional that we have to do in order to
I mean,
do
not
that?
any more than we already have for making sure our schools are
Okay.
safe.
And also, an interesting thing that I hadn't thought of, that SROs would have more insight into gang activity, those kinds of things that maybe that the SSOs would not. Do you see that as being a
Well,
problem?
I think we
or-
continue to partner with local agencies. I mean, this summer we're going through training with several of them. Emergency management's kind of coordinating it for a active shooter response. And so as we see ways that we can work more with the local agencies, I think that's something that we can, include in our SSO program.
Well, I just think that's an important thing, because a lot of times there's a lot of investigations going on that we may not know about behind the scenes. I just didn't know what kind of, if we were privy to that information or would be privy to that
I think that
information. Or
Dr. Corbin is
Okay.
very tied in with those people.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Mrs. Jones?
So I just have a question, Justin, Dr. Johnson, whoever. With the sheriff stating that he could hire these additional SROs, is there a time frame on that? Because, and I hate to be Debbie Downer, but he's been hiring them for 7 years. So my question is there a time frame on that? And then when we get them, because I want to speak optimistically, when they're in the buildings, is there some type, and I know you can't ever make someone stay in a position or whatever, but I think my concern is when we train them and we get them, do we know they're going to stay? Or is this a ploy to get these people trained and then yank them from us again like they did before, and they're out at CCA, or they're in, are they going to be in our buildings keeping our kids safe? And I struggle with these conversations because I feel like our children are such a vulnerable population that I hate that we even have to have this conversation, that they're not protected in a building if need be. But I'm just wondering, is there some type of accountability there? Because when all this happened earlier in the spring, I had a conversation with my county commissioner and with 2 other county commissioners about this. I even, for the first time ever in my tenure, called the county mayor. I've never called Mayor Coppinger about anything, but I called him with my concern about this. And I was informed that, of course, he's not an employee of the county mayor, but he's an employee of the people. And I understand that because he's an elected employee. But I just want the people who elect him his employers to understand that no one's saying yay or nay in his job performance, but there is an accountability level there. And when we don't do what we're supposed to do here, or let me go back. When Dr. Johnson doesn't do what he's supposed to do here, or you don't do what you're supposed to do here, Justin, Neely, Marsha, Penny, just as the parents did today, they hold our feet to the fire about making sure that people do their jobs. So I want to make sure that someone is holding, so maybe this ain't even for y'all, I'm hoping somebody is holding the county commission's feet to the fire to make sure that they're doing their part in what they've agreed to, because I feel like we have been above and beyond to ensure this. And I know what Marco was saying, but I've been here 7 years, Marco.
Yeah, I'm new.
I'm not knocking, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, and I have faith and I hope the best, but I am very concerned about the safety of our children. I don't care what color they are, what their mamas and daddies believe at home. I just want them safe, because in 3 years, my baby will be in one of those buildings. And I don't want whoever's going to replace Hammonds next year to be still promising me, even if I'm not sitting here, some SROs. Because I want my kids' building to have an SRO or SSO. And if we can't get an SRO, then all of them need SSOs. I'm over it. And we get these emails with both sides of the picture, but I will tell you this. I know people that work in that department, and I'm not so confident. So I just want to make sure that there's a level of accountability, and this is coming from a kid of a 30-plus year veteran of Chattanooga Police Department. So I'm not an anti-law enforcement. I'm all about it, and I was raised to respect law enforcement. But I just want to make sure that it's a dual relationship. It's amicable on both sides. And it sounds really good to say that, but I'm really shocked that you can come up with these people by August. But we've been waiting 7 years, even when we put money in. So I just want to go on record for saying that there needs to be a level of accountability, because I'm just not so, yay, let's seal the deal, until I see them in the buildings.
Mr. Press?
So again, having been in the commission, and I won't speak for anybody who spoke there, but I will repeat what I heard and what I understood. And so what I heard was a commitment by August, and I fully agree with you that we need to keep an eye on that. In a sense, the opportunity I see for us is the opportunity, if I understand what Dr. Robertson is asking here, is we will continue to increase the numbers to be able to achieve as much as we can. And yes, it will be on the public and the commission to keep an eye on what is happening on the other side. So for us as a school board, we are I heard a green light from the commission that day. And again, I'm an optimist, so I was hearing a green light because I wanted to hear a green light, to continue growing this. And if the sheriff can do it, wonderful. But if we can do it, wonderful. I'm gonna go ahead and say something as well, because again, people love contention and love division. But I want to publicly thank Dr. Corbin, who's in the back, who has taken a lot of heat, and unnecessarily so. Again, this isn't one against the other. We are all looking to protect our students. And we're all serving as best as possible, and and the green light I heard from the commission was, you all keep doing what you do, and we will look for funds as they become available, and then they approved the budget that included Sheriff Hammond's request for a budget. So and that included his commitment that he made very strongly, that he will have 32 officers at our schools. There is a difference that I also think is important in the public, in that our officers, our SSOs, are exclusively of the school, so they don't get pulled when there's an event. And obviously we understand that there's an event outside the school that's serious. They're gonna send an officer immediately from the sheriff's office. But our officers are exclusively from the school, for the school, so they will protect the schools full time, and unless one's absent for some reason. But But anyway, so that's just a difference between how they do. And I've said this before, but I correct the idea that some are lesser than the others. Yes, some have more authority, but the SSOs we have are highly trained officers and highly capable who are protecting our schools with great diligence. And so I do want to raise their value publicly as well, but equally thankful for the service of everybody else in the process.
All right, Mrs. Ford?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next item there is the Grow Your Own Program Partnerships Coordinator. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion around that item? Go ahead, Mrs.
No,
Thurman.
Joe, yeah, you weren't here the other night. Someone asked, I think it may have been Jenny, asked how many people we were talking about here. I think the number was 57. Said they were 35% of our pipeline. Is that correct? Jenny, is that what you said?
So this position will not only oversee Grow Your Own, which currently we have 57 candidates in that pipeline. You saw 6 of them tonight. But it's also going to oversee all of our other recruitment pathways. So also strategically looking at our HBCUs and other universities that we're recruiting from, as well as other pipelines and partnerships such as TFA and Project Inspire, and making sure that they're all moving in the same direction and collectively finding us all the candidates that we need that are quality teachers.
Who is doing that now?
So we don't have anyone dedicated to that now. It's kind of divided up, and with the additional partnerships that we've added. So we have Lipscomb University and UTC and Tennessee Tech and Lee College. You know, it takes a lot of effort to work with all of those partnerships and, you know, really steer those pipelines. And we're bringing a lot of that recruitment in-house because we're going to need to move in that direction because universities simply don't have the number of candidates that we need either.
So two points to add. Grow Your Own is the impetus for this. One.
Correct.
2, 3 points. 2, ESSER $3 would be used to fund this. 3, sustainability class size
waivers.
reduction will be able to support with opportunity culture.
Correct.
As the structure to be able to fund it in beyond the ESSER dollars. So it's Grow Your Own is the impetus for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it just seems like we've added a lot of people to HR. It seems like so many school board meetings we've added people to HR, and I just wonder sometimes what, it's just mind-boggling almost sometimes. So I just wonder, you know, who's doing that work now, and are they going to take on more responsibility or what? I don't know. It just seems like we've just added a lot of people to HR in the last few years. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Perez.
So, I think that's a very valid concern, Ms. Thurman. Being on the HR committee there, I do think we have to be aware, and recently I had an opportunity to speak to the team. We have to be aware that like hiring teachers is getting harder nationally and more competitive nationally, and as there are less teachers in the pipeline, and more districts are realizing this is a very competitive environment. And so the reason I say that, not just for one position, but I actually foresee in the future, we're going to need more recruiters out there. We're going to need people, I mean, almost dealing with how large companies have to deal with recruiting, right? Which is, we just have to be very proactive, very powerful in our recruitment efforts, intentional in our recruitment efforts. And then we also have to make, which I think we're heading in that direction to what Ms. Hill said at one point, I think our whole community is really driving the interest of education in Hamilton County, which draws teachers too. This will be a county people will want to work at, but we also are, it's just going to be more and more challenging to recruit because we're competing with, I mean, I've seen teachers post who've just graduated, I got a job in Florida, and it's like, but you're here, like it's really challenging, but Florida is being incredibly aggressive with hiring and other places. So I foresee that that's going to be a challenge moving forward, but this is just one more case, and I understand your concern.
Just quickly, I want to be clear about this for the entire board and for the public. Growing your own will cost us more. I mean, it's more hands-on, it's more intense. It will absolutely cost us more initially. The benefit is, and you saw tonight with the 6 folks that came, when you grow your own, the likelihood of them staying, which plays out in hopefully a reduction of recurring dollars for onboarding and retraining and resetting. I promise you right now, those 3 folks that we recognize that are going into classrooms are light years ahead, and I don't mean this as a disparaging comment against anybody coming out of an educated prep program as a traditional, educator to it, but they are light years ahead of traditional first-year teacher in general, because they've been in the classroom, they've engaged with students, they understand the system, they've had a chance to not just dip their toe in the water. I mean, one of the things that happened today, the commissioner visited, she went to Red Bank Elementary, and there was a music teacher that's an educational assistant that was teaching a class all summer reach, and I hope that we can get her into a Grow Your Own program, because she's ready to go, and it's just a certification for her. She's ready to rock and roll. And so I just share that to say this will cost us more initially. It's the right approach as the market is getting tighter, as UTC, Tennessee Tech, we've shared this data before, we need to share it again. All of our educator prep providers, the education programs are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. There are less people going into the field because, frankly, there are a lot of other opportunities that are valid there. So the Grow Your Own is a great model that the state has started to invest in. We've been the recipient and beneficiary of some of those grant dollars and resources, but it absolutely has taken more human capital on our end to stand it up, to be able to support it because of the complexity of it and because of the needs of the employees that are coming in. So.
Well, I know, but we've just hired so many different recruiters. What is the salary for this position?
It's a coordinator level position, so it's based on, and we'll probably have a certified individual, so it'd be based on their degree and step, and then a 1.38 index, so it's a coordinator level, so probably around 65 or 70. But it's a tremendous lift, a lot of partnerships and strategic work, so.
All right, do we have another comment on that item or question? All right, Mrs. Ford?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
No.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. That brings us down to the waiver of deed restrictions for the former Franklin Middle School property. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
So moved. Second.
Okay, do we have any question or comment about that item? Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next item is the transfer of the Garber property to Hamilton County government. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
Oh, okay. Can I ask how far along we are on that project? Can you give us an update, Ruby?
Yeah, it's coming along. Obviously, this is the construction site project. They are beginning clean out. I guess abatement will start here pretty soon. The money's been allocated from the state, the city, and the county. Obviously, we passed with the budget, so it will take off. Timeline is to work through it this year and do all the renovation and all that addition, all the stuff that needs to be done to have it ready to stand up in the fall of '22. So it's coming along really well. We also some local philanthropic partners have added resources. There was about a $1.5 million gap, but I believe that is almost fully closed to be able to fully stand it up and make it functional. So it's going to be really awesome for our students, really awesome for the community, and a much needed resource.
Anything else? Okay, Ms. Ford?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next item there would just be first read on Board Policy 1.803, the smoke-free and tobacco-free schools. Do we have any discussion around that? All right, so we'll move down to the calendar adoption for 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
You have a second?
Second?
All right, we have questions or comments around that item. Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I just would like some clarification. There are 5 asynchronous days here. What exactly are those? It says the buses will run, but did I hear some discussion about the students would be given work to do and they would be expected to do it on their own time? What's up with these days? There's 5 of them.
That's, I think you're talking about 21, 22, 22, 23. Those are not in the 22, 23. When the state
Well, why are they say they're in this calendar this year, this coming year, correct?
21, 22.
Okay. Well, so these days of
This
this
is the-
calendar are different.
This is for 22, 23.
Okay. So those are online learning days that are in this coming calendar? That's why, I guess.
That's correct.
There's a lot of calls about this.
So they were the half days. Jen, go ahead and you speak to it. Yeah.
Yep, so for this upcoming school year, they'll be asynchronous. We had approved the calendar before the state determined that we weren't gonna do asynchronous.
I started to say, that the state said we weren't gonna do that, so
Yeah.
what are we doing?
So for this upcoming year, we had already approved the calendar, and it was approved by the state, and then they came out with the rules. So for the following school year, our half-days are in person. We won't do any asynchronous learning.
So that doesn't
Okay.
pertain to this next year for us?
Correct.
Why are we doing, can we not vote to?
You absolutely can vote to.
I mean, why are we doing that? I mean, is it something, if the kids do work those half days, are they gonna be
Well-
graded on that? Is it something they have to do? Is it?
Yeah, so we may want to think about the operational efficiency component here just a little bit. We're in a half day, we're running buses, we're picking up students, you know what I mean? You got all those steps that are there. So there is some benefit. Obviously we've got to focus on staying in school, but the board has the ability, for the 21-22 calendar, the days are set. If you want to make any adjustments to how those are structured, the state has approved it. But if the board would like to adjust those to, in-person half days, that completely is at the pleasure of the board. This is the 22-23 calendar that is, that cuts those days out. And so there are half days, buses will run, students will be fed, et cetera. So what you're voting, what's for consideration today is the 22-23 calendar.
Yeah,
If
okay,
you all
I got
want us
that.
to amend the 21-22 calendar, we
Okay,
can
we'll
do that and
discuss
bring that to you.
later, but I just wanted to make sure these were not the same kind of days
Correct.
as those days, because I thought the state had voted that we couldn't do online anymore,
That's correct.
You're absolutely correct.
so.
All right, do we have any discussion around that item? All right, Mrs. Ford?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
No, because I still think we start the school too early, no.
Chairman Wingate.
No. All right, that brings us down to the approval for the renewal of the charter agreement with the Chattanooga Charter School of Excellence, the lower school. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
All right, any discussion or questions about that item? Okay, Mrs. Ford?
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman,
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I was just trying to get some clarification on the next item here. So next item would be the approval for Chattanooga Charter School of Excellence contract, and that would be for Secondary
Addition of the
school?
Addition of the high school. So
Okay.
they've had, the lower was up for renewal, the upper is a new site. So what's under consideration here is the new site.
Okay. Mr. Perez?
Just, why do I feel we already voted for this?
Yeah.
We discussed it last.
Yeah, you did, so you discussed it, you voted on, this is the actual contract complete that's coming forward.
Okay. I know, just
We
trying to
voted on
understand.
the application.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah, we approved it on there.
Ms. Thurman, did you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay. Anybody else?
We don't have a motion on the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Anything else on that? All right, Ms. Ford.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next item would be the charter contract for Ivy Academy to add an element. Is that adding an elementary? I thought they already had.
No.
Okay.
Second site.
Second site. Okay.
They're doing it this next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I've been a
I
little out
move
of
to approve this.
All right. Did you get two there, Mrs. Ford?
I got Ms. Thurman approved.
Second.
Mr. Smith, okay, thank you.
All right. Any discussion there?
Yeah, they're gonna have two sites, one in Sunny Daisy and one up off 58
Okay.
elementary school, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, let me just interject. If you've never had the opportunity to go look at what Angie Martin is doing up there, it'd be worth your trip. I
Yeah.
mean, it just blows me away, the work that she and her staff are doing with kids up there. It's amazing.
It's true.
All right, Ms. Ford.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. Next item would be field improvements at Howard High School on the softball field. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion or question on that item?
I do just want to thank Dr. Robertson for working with the coaches at Howard to make this possible. The girls softball team has been a growing team and a great opportunity for the students there, and so it's going to be really great to see them have the kind of softball field that they need and that they deserve. So I want to tell you thank you, Justin. So.
On that note, Tiffany, we were told Monday night they're raising it up because it floods there and they're doing a lot of work there, so hopefully that will alleviate a lot of the problems they've had there in the past.
Yes.
I think we're ready.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Chairman Wingate.
Yes. All right, last item here. Mrs. Hill had asked me about discussion on this urban schools class policy retreat, so I told her we would do that. Mrs. Hill?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, Tiffany is legislation, but when I saw this come across, it looked like they needed some answers from us. They were expecting some answers from Hamilton County Schools pretty quickly. And Tucker very quickly said he was interested in attending. I wondered,
great, yeah.
like, if you were planning, I think it's in October, to know about that, but then also the fact that we'd be looking at a new legislative year and perhaps going ahead and working as a group on what our legislative priorities are going to be for the next session. We're slowly getting into a routine with that. Tiffany did a great job of it this last year. So, any thoughts about that, Tiffany?
Yeah, I mean, I support the board starting to really think through this. I think that last year we, as a collective group, we didn't get to have a conversation about our legislative priorities, and I think that was primarily because of the chaos of COVID. But no doubt that on the state level, there was no better time for us to be paying attention to what was going on. And so I do think that this coming year is going to be just as important, especially with the kind of seeing what happens next post-COVID, and then, to be really honest with you, with so much that's happening in the political climate around education, I think that it's important that our board do have that conversation or become as informed as we can on, what is potentially on the docket and where do we advocate and where do we get involved. So I agree with you.
So maybe, Chairman, we could have a work session to talk about that at some point.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about that and maybe send something out to everybody.
Maybe
So
in
you're saying
August sometime.
before we typically convene with class in the fall? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, actually, if I can just piggyback on what you're saying, I actually think it would be incredibly beneficial for our board to maybe even consider meeting with our state delegates. We get to spend time with them at, roundtable events and sometimes one-on-one, but as a collective body, I don't know of a time that we've really done that since I've been on the board. I'm sure we have a couple times, but everything's a blur from
It's been about
2020.
3 years.
I think everything's been erased from my brain. But yeah, pre-COVID. But I think that it'd be really impactful for us to sit down and really hear, what our legislative team's view is on what's going to be important in Nashville come January 2022 around education, because there is a lot happening. And to be really honest with you, as the class representative, it is difficult to keep up with everything that's going on because there's so much happening in such a fast period of time. And so if we want to be the best quote unquote lobbyist as we can be for ourselves, for our school district, I think it might be worthwhile just having that conversation. And to be honest with you, I think that we have a great relationship with our state delegates, and so we need to really leverage that and talk more. And I know that you do. I know you talk a lot with them, but as a board, I think that there are things that we are seeing that we could bring to them that they would appreciate to hear and to know more about.
All right, anything else around that item? So Mrs. Hill, just maybe put your head around that and think about,
Well, I mean, I
I'm
don't
sorry.
want to step on Tiffany's
you're
toes,
not.
but I
No,
just think
you're
if we
not.
had a work session, maybe
Yeah.
in August or
I think that's a
September,
great
that would
idea.
give Tiffany plenty of time before October.
I think I love that idea. I think it's a great idea. I absolutely second that. Happy to organize it as well.
Okay.
Does that touch on what you want to talk about though, the urban schools policy retreat?
Well, so I would see that as work to prepare our representatives for that urban policy retreat, because this is the first time, as far as I know, that the districts have convened in this way. And I mean, we've seen that some of the other larger districts have really not had the successes with the legislature that we have seen with our delegation. And so I feel like we need to go in knowing what we want to push for Hamilton County Schools, so that our representation through class truly represents what we need in Chattanooga and in Hamilton County. Because Memphis and Nashville have they're just a lot bigger than us. So.
Yeah, they're bigger and they're in a lot of ways different than us. We are a very unique school system. So I did want to mention though that I expected Senator Gardenhire earlier this week, and there was a meeting last week with the state comptroller. Are you familiar with this, Dr. Johnson? I think that we actually got left out of the equation or the conversation, unfortunately, and it was to talk about how the dollars can be spent. They're coming, is it CARE dollars? Yeah. Okay, so, but he was not upset by any means, but he was concerned that we weren't able to be a part of the conversation because he admittedly said that no one got us information. So, but there's going to be a second conversation on August 9th, and it's going to be in Bradley County, but it's the same conversation, and it's basically just kind of an overview from the state level about how those dollars can be spent, and basically the comptroller answering any and all questions for legislative bodies that are receiving these dollars to really understand it. And so I think that would be smart for our board, and then hopefully some of our administration team to go to as well. So he told me it's August 9th, probably at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that he'll send me the location whenever he has it.
All right. So, upcoming events, announcements here quickly. District office will be closed July 5th in observance of Independence Day. Our next work session will be Monday, July the 12th. Next board meeting will be Thursday, July 15th. Anybody else got anything they want to make an announcement about? All right, meeting adjourned.